Kojak är tillbaka.
Visual sequence 1, 8 seconds. It takes you from black via a sweep-in, rectangular formed sweep-in, to a very close-up of a man whose profile is exaggerated and whose shadow is exaggerated with light streaming in from a window on the right. It then zooms out, the same very close-up, to a position mid-screen. Visual sequence 2 lasts for 5 seconds. Kojak, by his window, could now be in any of the windows we can see as the sweep-in pattern reveals a very sunlit Manhattan. He's right in the center of the picture somewhere. Visual sequence 3 also lasts for 5 seconds, and in it we see the same kind of rectangular sweep-in, but this time with a wide-angle lens aerial view of downtown Manhattan. And Kojak, in his little screen window, talks and he puts on his hat as if to go out. And his window's right on top of the Empire State Building, and his face is like affixed to the top of it. Actually, is that little window really in the top right-hand corner of the screen? Well, no, because even if Kojak's screen window is top right, the rectangle still sweeps in around him. Besides which, the pattern's diagonal from top right to left bottom, and New York's crosstown streets with the wide-angle lens align perfectly with the direction of Kojak's action and speech. Visual sequence number 4, 6 seconds. Kojak's little window is now at the bottom edge in the middle of the screen, and he's running down a street at night. He lifts his gun and he aims to shoot somebody. The rectangular sweep-in pattern, which reveals a view of the Battery and of Manhattan from Liberty Island, still revolve around Kojak, even though his doorway-shaped window is on the edge of the screen. Will he emerge from this screen, or will a bullet emerge from the edge of this screen? Clearly, Kojak is not just a man of action. He also seems capable of walking on water. With visual sequence 5A, which lasts for 6.5 seconds, we are right in the middle of the Kojak theme, which lasts for 50 seconds in all. Kojak's window is now center-left, and it has been tipped some 30 degrees anti-clockwise into a parallelogram. The sweep-in pattern revolving around Kojak here has also lost its rectangularity, and instead of revealing Manhattan by day, as in the previous sequences, a nighttime view of a busy New York street unfolds. There are differences too in Kojak's window. No longer is he talking, running, shooting, or otherwise driving the action. Instead, someone else seems to be waving a piece of paper at him while he looks on and listens quite passively. Visual sequence 5B lasts only 3.5 seconds, just enough for a very slow reader to register that the man in the picture is called Telly Savalas. That name is superimposed onto a freeze frame of the irregular pattern and its background, while in the Kojak window, someone else goes on wagging a finger or waving a piece of paper. Telly Savalas as what is the question? Well, let's hope that visual sequences 6 and 7 provide the answer. Visual sequence 6A, which is 5 seconds long, is perhaps the most striking and interesting of all the sequences. The question raised in the previous sequence was Telly Savalas as what? Well, Telly Savalas as blank. Telly Savalas as 5 columns rising in random order. Telly Savalas in the shape of stylized skyscrapers glittering in the sun. Telly Savalas as those shiny buildings tipping forward to reveal on their roofs the golden name Kojak in grossly exaggerated central perspective. It's as if something powerful, glittering, almost burning, rapidly approaches us from afar and flies at great speed over our heads. In point of fact, Kojak's name doesn't actually fly over our heads, even if it looked like it might have at one point. Instead, his name ends up as 5 large, solid, two-dimensional letters occupying center screen, gold on black. In visual sequence 6B, which lasts for 5 seconds, the solid gold name Kojak is superimposed onto and cross-faded into a close-up of the man who put on his hat in visual sequence 4. As with sequence 1, light from the window on the right highlights this man's facial profile. Kojak, his name and his presence now occupy the entire screen. Visual sequence 7, which occupies the last 4.5 seconds of the opening titles, cuts from the previous close-up to a continuation of the VCU take from sequence 1. This VCU is then swept out to black using the same rectangular spiral mask as at the start.
Today's special is Memphis Soul Stew. We sell so much of this, people wonder what we put in it. We're going to tell you right now. Give me about a half a teacup of bass. Now I need a pound of fatback drums.
So, why are and called stabs? Well, it's a term I've heard used in film music production circles. And anyhow, stabs are sharp, sudden, forceful, jerky, and dangerous movements. In the Kojak theme, comes loud, shrill, and sudden at relatively unexpected intervals. Now, and are perhaps the most familiar stabs in our mass media culture, and Kojak's resembles these two on several counts. To illustrate the similarities more clearly, I'm going to make Kojak's more dissonant, so that it becomes Of course, is less threatening than its dissonant counterpart, and it's much less so than either or. After all, excitement and surprise can be relatively pleasant or unpleasant. Still, to get the surprise adrenaline hit effect, shrill pitch, harsh timbre, and unexpected timing are often useful tools. Bernard Herrmann's violin stabs for the Psycho shower scene consist of regularly repeated dissonances. Their horror comes not from their inexorably regular placement on the timeline, but from their strident attack, their harsh dissonances, and from the extreme irregularity of camera angles and distances, not to mention the jagged cutting rhythm, which, in contrast to the music's rhythmic regularity, makes for a very, very unsettling effect. Still, that's another story. The point here is that the Kojak woodwind stabs are sudden, shrill, piercing and jerky, so it's probable that the adrenaline trip may be positive rather than negative, because the stabs are in consonance with the melody and with the underlying harmonies.